In 3 months, I'll have been a wife for 8 years. And I don't think people are fully honest about what marriage actually does to you. Because everyone talks about finding the right person, but almost nobody talks about who you have to become once you're actually married. And that's when things start to fall apart. I really thought marriage would be mostly about building a life together if I found the right person, and it is that, very much so. But what I didn't expect is how much it would actually become about Jesus shaping me, refining me, and teaching me how to love like him. I want to talk to you today about what 8 years of marriage has actually been like for me, and the parts that stretched me, surprised me, and that completely transformed me. And towards the end, I'm going to share the shift that took the pressure off my marriage entirely, because once I actually understood this, everything started to feel a lot lighter. I really thought marriage would mostly be about building a life together, and it is that. But I didn't realize how much it would also be about God working on me. When I got married, I was 25. We had dated for 2.5 years before that. And I was really convinced so much of like, yeah, we're going to come together and build God's kingdom. And just really like, when you think about building, it's one brick on top of another. You don't think about how building is not linear. And I've never built a house from scratch before, so I don't know all of the different ups and downs that you can go through. But I was very naive about not just what it takes to build a marriage, but what it takes to build me as a wife. The first few years of marriage were pretty disorienting, and we didn't even experience the really hard year that a lot of people talk about, their first year of marriage. And it wasn't that something was wrong, it was because I was being known and discovered and learning and meeting new parts of myself that I had never met before. I mean, of course, I've never been a wife before, and I can kind of equate it, I guess, to when you are graduating, you're going from middle school to high school or high school to college, and you're excited about what's coming, and you're making this step because you feel it's the best step for you, and you've been talked up about all the benefits. But when you get there, you're realizing like, oh my gosh, like there's a lot of this stuff that's over my head. Looking back, I can totally see that God wasn't just building our life, but he was transforming my heart. Not just what I believed about him, but again, really what I believed about myself. And it's kind of this beautiful and ugly hard transformation. The first things that marriage showed me is that it doesn't fix you, it reveals you. One of these quotes that I've heard about marriage I love so much is that like marriage and your partner, your spouse, is your mirror. So a lot of times they will show you what you look like. Of course, we've all used a mirror before, or like when you look at yourself in your iPhone, make sure you don't have any like food in your teeth or anything like that. And your spouse very much can be that for you. And sometimes if we don't remember that, if I don't remember that, I can get mad at my husband or feel like, why are you telling me that? Why are you correcting me? Not realizing like, oh, he's helping me see things about myself that I wouldn't be able to see, without him. And the Bible tells us, to not forget what you look like when you look into a mirror. It's like very foolish to do that. I think it says something like that. And I remember after we had our first son, we were obviously exhausted new parents, and I had asked my husband to change our son's diaper. And he is and was and always has been a very involved dad. So me asking him to change his diaper wasn't like a crazy thing to do, but he had said no, and it wasn't like a mean, it was more like a tired no, like, oh no, I don't want to, which is things I've said before to him too, and he's asked me to do things. And I got really upset about that, and it became a bigger deal than it needed to be. But looking back, I apologized because I wasn't being very sensitive in that moment. Like, I was just asking him to change the diaper because I didn't want to do it, not because I was like on the phone or I was cooking dinner or I was busy. It was kind of like, all right, I'm disrupting him. Like, he's tired. We're both tired. And I honestly, it came from a place where like I've learned that the Lord had shown me through that I kind of had this mentality of like, okay, you're the leader. You are the man. You're the dad. You're the husband. Like, I shouldn't be suffering more than you. But I think what I've learned, especially through parenting, is that suffering looks a lot of different ways. And my way of suffering in my heart is not worse than his heart. And I've learned to respect and honor his role in his heart. And just because he's not changing diapers as much as I am doesn't mean he's not also going through hard things. And that whole situation, the Lord used that to show me that I was comparing. And my heart when asking him to help change our son's diaper was like, I've changed more diapers than you today. Now it's your turn. And I know that we kind of laugh at that as young moms or moms who have young kids of like, oh, okay, well, you can help out. You can do things, we're parenting together. And that's true. But also I wasn't taking into account the fact that he was up with the baby, during the night, and he would get up and, change his diaper and do things like that were helpful. So it wasn't like he was doing nothing. And it's like, the Bible tells us that love keeps no records of wrongs. And I was being a record keeper in that moment, and that wasn't right. And I never kind of considered myself to be that way, of course, but marriage has really shown me that like I can compare. And I realized over time that like, it's not even just with my husband that I have a tendency to compare. It's with friends. It was with coworkers at the time. It can be with family members where I'm looking like, oh, well, so-and-so does this. Why don't you do that? And it's not even remembering and thinking like everybody has a different set of talents. Everybody has a different set of resources and opportunities and experiences. And really assuming the best. So I was trying to criticize him in that moment, but really the Lord was looking at me. It's good news because I wouldn't want the Lord to compare me to somebody else who I didn't have the same opportunities and access to. And so how much more so, me with another person. Moments like that have shown me that Jesus cares not just about what I say and what I ask for, but how I say it and like the reasoning and the heart for underneath it. And the Bible tells us that the Lord looks, like people look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. And I may feel justified as a wife, you're supposed to cover me, you're supposed to do this, you're supposed to do that. And it's like, okay, yes, but also am I doing what I'm supposed to do? One thing I didn't realize about getting married is that marriage is less about finding the right person and more about becoming the kind of person who can actually love someone well over time, especially when real life starts happening and both of you turn out to be a lot more human than you imagined. So the third thing about marriage, if I'm reviewing marriage, after almost 8 years of being a wife, is a lot of times the things that are bothering me that seem like it's a marriage problem almost are never an actual marriage problem. This is what I mean. So I've had to learn that not every issue, like most of the time, it's me. I'm the problem. Cue Taylor Swift. Just kidding. But yeah, a lot of times it's not marriage. It's not the covenant that's the problem. It's me. It's my perspective. It's my mindset. It's lies that I've believed about myself, about others that need to be uprooted. And marriage is kind of like the container or the room that the Lord has me in to help me see that issue a little bit more. And if like, again, back to the mirror analogy, like if I have a pain on my face and then I go into the bathroom and look into the mirror and realize like, oh, my face is because I have a huge pimple on my face. I'm not going to get mad at the bathroom or at the mirror for showing me the pimple. I'm going to be grateful. Okay, now I know what the problem is. Now let me see how I can treat it. That would be pretty foolish of me to be mad. Oh, the mirror is lying to me. The bathroom, I hate this bathroom because it's showing me a pimple. And sometimes marriage can be the bathroom in that analogy or the mirror in that analogy where it's like, all right, I'm in this place that's showing me what's wrong and the problem is me. I'm part of the problem. And now that's not giving my husband or any husband, a fix or an excuse to not do their own work, but I can't control him. God doesn't hold me accountable for what he does. He holds me accountable for what I do. And that's been a really hard shift for me. And that kind of, which is a whole other video of like, giving my husband feedback in love when he wants to hear it, when he's ready to hear it, when the Holy Spirit prompts me to hear it or to share it. But I really have to focus on myself and me growing. There was a time in our marriage, early on in our marriage, where I was holding on to a friendship and my husband was like, why? Why are you trying to hold on to that? And he was being very gentle about it, of course, and kind, but I was kind of like, I know this person better than you do. She's been around longer than you, that type of thing. But he really had a very valuable perspective. And he turned out to be right about that friendship. And there's nothing wrong with the girl, of course, but like, It just was like, some relationships are seasonal and they're not, you gotta let it go. And I have such a hard time, y'all. I have such a hard time admitting when it's time to move on from something. I'm like loyal to the core. It's to my detriment a lot of times. But I had to realize that he had a clearer perspective on the situation than I did. And I was emotionally attached and he wasn't. It's kind of like the benefit of a third party, having somebody who's unbiased. And like, sure, you could say he's not fully unbiased because he loves me and he wants to protect me. But also the Lord has given him to me to help me and support me. And just the same way, I've given my husband perspectives on things for friendships where I was right. And he was like, yeah, you were right. And we're there to help each other. And that I had to swallow, or what do they say, like, have a slice of humble pie, because I really do believe that Jesus used him to show me something I couldn't see on my own. And that, again, was an example of just me holding value for him, like holding the value that the Lord has given him in my life. One of the best ways that I can explain, or the clearest ways that I can explain marriage now on this side where I am, and I say this very humbly because 8 years, I know it's not a long time, but I look up to people, like one of my aunts, she's been married for 60 years, and I obviously hope to live that long, live into my 80s, but then to be married to the same person for that long. So our marriage is still very young. We're like a first grader. But this is really me talking to, fiancés, brand new wives, like that version of me, not holding back, the little bit of experience and perspective that I do have. And one of the clearest ways that I can kind of share or explain marriage from where I'm standing at it right now, again, not saying I know it's going to change, is like an offense and defense. So I'm really big on sports analogies. I grew up playing sports. I was by no means good at them, but that's just like how my brain kind of works. And if we think about like playing basketball, if you're on if you're on offense and you have the ball and you're dribbling down the court, a lot of things in marriage, a lot of things that we look forward to in marriage are offensive things. Things like date nights and having kids and buying a house and moving forward, like kind of scoring points, if you will, like whatever that means for you, whether it's running a business together, whether it's traveling together, whatever it is that you want to do with your husband in your marriage, like those are like offensive things. And those are kind of like the glamorous highlights, the things that everybody wants to do. Everybody wants to score points if you play basketball, right? But the harder things that a lot of times, and when I did play basketball in high school, defense is one of the hardest things to do and to be really good at. And they always give defensive players of the year awards and things like that. But playing defense in marriage is really doing hard work, and sometimes you feel like you're not in control because you don't have the ball. But defense, if you've ever played basketball or watched a basketball game, defense is equally, if not more important than offense, and scoring points, if you will. So things that are like defensive in marriage are things like learning how to handle conflict well, how you respond in your everyday interactions, how you guys manage tension, repairing after you guys have some type of tiff or conflict, or you make a mistake or you sin, how you repair your relationship when there is a rip or a tear in your relationship with your spouse, how you handle responsibilities, chores, things that people don't really want to do, but come along with marriage, but it's kind of like, yeah, like sickness, things like that. That's kind of the defense, and they both matter. And if you try to kind of ignore and play up the highlights and like the offense part of it, and that's where we see a lot of like social media highlights and expectations and fantasies and movies and things where you're like, oh my gosh, this is what my married life is going to be like, and we're all excited about the date nights and all of that, but we don't take the time to really sit down and do like the hard work of the defense. But if you do too much defense, you're exhausted. And think about playing basketball, you're sitting, you're doing shuffles, you're rebounding, you're blocking, like that stuff is exhausting, and you need to score points in order to get your excitement and your energy up. So you need both in marriage, of course. And I think for us, this comes up a lot in conversations about finances. We have something now called weekly marriage meetings where we mostly talk about finances and schedules, but that's also a space where we could talk about like conflict, or if there's something that happened that week that we need to kind of discuss. That's like kind of a safe place to do that. And during those meetings, those are hard for me because they can kind of feel like going to the principal's office. Not that my husband is the principal, it's really God who's the principal, because God is the one who's the head of our household and who's in charge. But a lot of times it's like, oh man, like budget meetings are really tough, because for me, it can feel a lot of like, all right, this has to get cut. This has to be put on pause. That's just kind of where we are right now. And it's not a bad thing, because it's teaching us discipline, but also I'm not like super excited about it. And my husband looks at it a little bit more, practically, as I'm looking at it kind of from like a place of like being afraid or being stuck, or like dreams not being realized, and like, oh man, like here we go again, something else that I can't have or I can't do. I can kind of make it a little bit more emotional versus like, all right, he can make it a little bit more practical. And he's very sensitive to my feelings and what I'm going through and how I kind of view things right now. So really mastering repair and like defense has been a good opportunity for me during our weekly meetings. I've had plenty of opportunities to go back and say like, hey, I'm really sorry for how I'm reacting right now about this. Like this literally happened 2 weeks ago, and I was just thinking about like, yeah, because he asked me, like, I had like a stink face on. He was like, what's wrong? I was like, okay, this isn't really about you. Like, you didn't do anything wrong. This is just, I'm discouraged. I'm frustrated about this. And he was like, okay, I understand. And like, I see where you're coming from. And, on a good day and a good marriage meeting, if I kind of can make him laugh, we make each other laugh, we have like a nice snack to kind of release the tension and the pressure, like that's great. And that's a repair tactic in and of itself. And I just really have had to ask the Lord to help me respond and act in humility or respond with humility instead of reaction, because those meetings or times like that when we're playing defense, it could really escalate and turn into something that's a bigger deal than what it needs to be. And then you kind of get in those situations where like, I don't even know what we're fighting about. 1 second we're having the marriage meeting, and the next moment people are slamming doors and all that stuff. And luckily that doesn't happen for us. We don't let it escalate to that point. But if I didn't repair and I didn't realize like, okay, it's my turn to play defense right now. Like I love offense, I love scoring points, but defense is important too. And like that's the beautiful thing about basketball versus baseball. You can't pick and choose what you play. Like everybody on the basketball field has to play, or the basketball court has to play offense and defense. It's not like on baseball where some people are just offensive players and they only hit and, score home runs and they go sit down. Like no, marriage, you cannot only be the date night girl. You cannot only be the fun wife. You cannot only be the one to, talk about dreams and travel plans. You have to do the hard stuff too. Okay, so I'm so curious. If you're married or you're engaged, what's been the most surprising part for you so far? Especially if you're a newlywed, I would love to hear. I feel like no one talks about enough, what's surprising. Everyone just talks about like, oh, how's it going? And what's exciting? And, how is the wedding? And like weddings are great and fine, but they're really only one day, maybe a half a day, unless you do like a huge marathon of multiple days. But tell me in the comments what's been surprising you so far. Okay, so continuing with my review of marriage after 8 years, another aspect that I have to add in if you're thinking about getting married or you're going to get married soon and maybe you haven't seen a really healthy marriage in your life, so you're just really asking yourself like, how am I going to do this, Lord? Like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't have any healthy examples. One aspect that I want to share with you is that respect is built in private. I used to think that respect was mostly about what I did publicly, like how I treated people to their face, which that stuff is important. But what I've really understood that's built in private, not just private one-on-one conversations like me and my husband, obviously that's important too, but it's really like my tone of voice, when I'm tired, what assumptions that I'm making about him. So really privately is what I mean, like in my head, in my thoughts. And the Bible tells us that as a man or a woman thinketh, so is he. So how I think about my husband is going to manifest and influence how I talk about him, words I say, and how I treat him. So even when he's not around, if I'm just talking to family or friends and he's not there, it's not like, oh, it's not disrespectful because he's not there or it's not there. It's really about like how I think about him too. So if I don't like, or if Jesus doesn't like, or if my husband doesn't like the way that I've been talking to him. It really starts in my thoughts. The other thing that you need to know if you're going to get married soon is that you are going to feel misunderstood. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because your husband's going to feel misunderstood too. One of my favorite books on marriage is Love and Respect by Emerson Eggerichs. And I think he does such a wonderful job of breaking down like the fundamental, basic, emotional, spiritual, psychological differences between men and women. And it's a good thing to be different from your husband, but I think as a woman, maybe men do this too, we tend to love our husbands the way that we want to be loved. So if I communicate and receive love by talking and conversation, I started out our marriage thinking my husband would feel that way too. Like, oh, let's talk about how her day was, or what do you think about this, or what do you think about that? And he's like, I just want to lay here. Like, or I'd rather go for a walk or something like that. And I'm like, what? Why would you want to do that? But I think that a lot of times that can breed a lot of frustration for wives, thinking like, oh, why doesn't he want to do what I want to do when I want to do it? And that doesn't mean that something's wrong with your marriage if you guys misunderstand each other's needs or wants, or he got you a gift that you didn't like, or you got him a gift that he didn't like, and that's going to happen. It's just you're learning each other, and like you're riding a bike right now as being a new wife. Even I'm still learning, and I'm still riding a bike and pivoting and learning, and as I'm growing and changing, and as my husband's growing and changing, and as our family's growing and changing. So you have to just really get comfortable and excited and grateful about learning. Like, fall in love with learning. I had, and I'm still growing out of this kind of bend to be like on autopilot. I like having systems. I like knowing what to expect. And that doesn't really work in life. And like some micro areas it can for a while until it doesn't. And marriage is very much, that way. So even if like, oh, you had a favorite flower that you guys had with you when you were dating that he would buy you, and then, you tell him like, oh, I don't like lilies anymore, like I like roses, and then he bought you lilies, and you're like, what's wrong with you? I told you I don't like these anymore. And he's just like, oh man, you used to like these when we dated 2 years ago. And it can feel very frustrating. You feel very unseen and very misunderstood as a wife, as a woman. But it's okay to feel misunderstood. That's really an opportunity to give grace. And the Bible tells us where sin abounds, grace abounds all the more. And there will never be a time in your marriage where you don't need grace and that he doesn't need grace, and you both need grace from Jesus equally. And remembering that, like whenever I get frustrated about something or I feel misunderstood, I remember like, okay, well, I just misunderstood him 5 seconds ago or 5 minutes ago or yesterday or 5 days ago. So like, who am I to withhold grace from him when I am someone myself who needs so much grace? And a major part of building something together, something that's strong, is accepting that you're both two imperfect people that are slowly learning the language of each other's hearts over time. This is something that I wrote down a while ago, and I wanted to share because I feel like it was so impactful. Okay, so this next part is what really shifted things for me, because I didn't realize how much pressure I was putting on myself. I'm somebody who holds very high expectations, not always in a good way, in a healthy way, but this is what I was putting pressure on myself until I understood this. Your husband cannot be everything for you. One of the biggest shifts for me was realizing that my husband was never meant to be everything for me. Emotionally, physically, financially, like every single part of the spectrum, like every single thing. Like having friends is a good thing, having hobbies is a good thing, having your own outlets and like sense of achievement and things like that are very, very good and helpful. And I think that when we start marriage, a lot of times we think like, all right, like my whole personality is going to change. Like becoming a wife is going to be my whole personality. And that's not really a bad thing. And there needs to be a lot of grace here. There's a lot of gray area. The more that I'm learning about the Lord, the more that I'm learning and understanding the gray areas, and like not everything is black and white. Some things are, a lot of things are. But a lot of things are not, and he's in that with us. And I feel like gray and grace sound the same, start with the same 3 letters for a reason. There was a situation last year where something had come up from my past, and I felt like he wasn't giving it the weight and like attention that it needed, because that's what I wanted and what I felt like he needed. Instead of kind of looking at it as like, all right, I'm going to give this to you, give you the facts, and like just see what it is that he felt needed to be paid attention to, or what he felt like the Lord was saying about it. And I wanted him to validate me and validate the situation. In a way, he didn't do it. And I felt really let down, and I was really disappointed. But I really shouldn't have put that pressure on him. I shouldn't have looked to him to validate me. That wasn't fair. Like, he is a sinful, broken person just like I am. And I think that, I mean, I shared all this with him, like how I felt and what I wanted. And he was like, okay, like, you know, thank you for sharing that. And I see where you're coming from, but that's not, this is where I'm coming from. This is how I see it. And what he told me was like, you know, as your husband, this is what my role is to protect our marriage and protect you. And this is the route I think that you should take because of that. Like, from where I sit in this seat, you know, and your friends can give you a different perspective, but they don't sit in the seat that I sit in. And none of it can be wrong, but you just have to ask yourself, like, what are you going to prioritize? What are you going to listen to? And I ended up listening to him, and I'm glad I did almost a year later. And after my emotions calmed down, I was able to see, like, yeah, he was right. And I'm glad that I trusted him, and we've built trust, you know, in that way. And I don't know how, and I think I told him this when the situation came up, I don't know how I would have responded if that same situation had come up earlier on in our marriage when we hadn't built that trust up until that point. So when I brought that to the Lord, I think that it was more rightly seated, if you will. It was more appropriate. And it took pressure off, and I realized, like, okay, that was, girl, you were wrong. So everything felt lighter after that. The more that I've learned about Jesus, and I just have so much to learn, and will never stop learning about him. He needs to be my first call. And he needs to be the one that I'm dumping the most on, and not expecting too much of others, my husband, but just others in general. And just honestly being honest about my own expectations. If you're getting married soon, you need to know that marriage made me more honest about my need for Jesus, which I feel like was a perfect segue from what we were just talking about. Marriage didn't make me less independent. It made me more honest about how much I actually need the Lord. Because there are days when loving my husband well doesn't come naturally for me. It's not as easy as maybe I thought that it was going to be if I'm having a bad day or a rough morning. And I've had to lean on the Lord and had to ask him to help me to be patient, to be slow to speak, and to be gentle, because those things do not come naturally to me since they are fruits of the Spirit. And something I didn't expect about marriage is how sweet it really gets. So this is kind of more back to the offense piece that we talked about earlier. And for us, it's something as small as, like, every Friday, my husband gets us Oreo Thins. And I actually had some leftover before I record this video from last night. And so every Friday we have Halo Top and Oreo Thins. If you're a Halo Top fan, let me know your favorite flavor below. My favorite one right now is the sweet cream cold brew. It's so good. If you haven't tried it, please do. And it's just a simple habit that we have. But I'm just like, man, I love this guy. This is my best friend. We have this little ritual. Like, it's fun. We're watching Next Level Chef. Like, we have our shows that we go through. It's so fun to do. Like, kind of thinking about, like, vegging out on the couch with, you know, your best friend. That's what we get to do. And we're building more inside jokes and making each other laugh. And it's just the best, especially when life is really hard. It's just one of those, like, kind of examples where you're like, all right, we really are a team. Like, this is my guy. So if this kind of conversation is helpful for you about marriage, I would love to make more videos for brand new wives and fiancés or girlfriends or people who want to be wives one day, or if you're kind of in, like, the middle of the growing up stage of marriage, just like me. So overall, my review of marriage, if I could summarize it in one sentence, this is my highlight on Amazon. 5 stars, 10 out of 10 recommend, highly recommend. Marriage didn't just give me, let me read it to you guys. And it didn't just make me less independent. It made me more honest about the parts of my heart that still need the Lord's help. And I'm really grateful to go through all of that with the same man every day. It has shaped me. It has humbled me. It has taught me how to love. It's still teaching me how to love Jesus, how to love myself, how to love my husband, how to love others. It's made me a better person. It's still making me a better person. And I'm learning that every day. Hopefully this was an honest review And marriage, I'll be the first one to say marriage is not for everybody. So if you're like, yep, I know it's hard and I don't want to do it, I respect that. But I don't ever want anyone to go into marriage with unrealistic expectations. I think one of the greatest gifts before you start any new venture, new job, new phase of life, parenting, marriage, even if you're going through hard things like a health diagnosis, is to have a sober minded expectations. So if you're even thinking about marriage, you want marriage. I know a lot of us women grow up wanting to get married, and when you get into your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, maybe even, you're like, is this still in the cards for me? Am I doing this right? Is this marriage going to last? Would I even be good at marriage? Would I even be a good wife given what I know and what I've seen and what I've been exposed to? Like, I get it. It makes sense. And I had great parents. My parents were married for 33 years before my dad passed away. But we have history of divorce in our family. My husband has history of divorce in his family. So we don't come from like a perfect background. And it is possible. It is possible. It is proof and an example with Jesus. Anything is possible doesn't mean that's not hard. It doesn't mean that we get to skip out on the hard work. But it is possible. That's all I have for you guys today. I would love to see you in the comments. Let me know what part stood out to you, what you're learning in marriage, what you have learned from marriages that you've seen up close, what you want to learn about marriage. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.